Russia has abandoned Iran to face American military power alone as the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier strike group surrounds the Persian Gulf with 7 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles. With Iran in crisis, Moscow and Beijing may be starting to hedge. President Donald Trump says a massive armada is making its way to Iran and is ready to use violence if necessary. Trump has warned Iran that it must make a deal with the White House about the future of its nuclear capabilities. The latest threat that a fleet of U.S. warships is heading to the Middle East. Russian President Vladimir Putin has held closed-door talks with Iran's top security official Ali Larijani in Moscow. Throughout the last year, both China and Russia labored to shield Iran from sanctions and measures against Tehran's nuclear noncompliance. But cracks in the alliance are showing. Share this with everyone you know because Putin's silence as Iran faces potential American strikes represents the most dramatic betrayal since Moscow abandoned Assad, Syria. All 3 countries sent ships to a recent BRICS naval exercise, the Will for Peace 2026, that took place off the coast of South Africa. Iran withdrew from the exercise, however, nudged reportedly by its great power friends. Before we break down exactly why Russia and China are abandoning Tehran to its fate, please make sure you subscribe to Daily Military Talks. We're giving you the real analysis nobody else will touch. One of the more extraordinary aspects of this turbulent start to 2026 has been the near silence over American adventurism from Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is a man never previously shy to accuse the U.S. of being imperialist, decadent, deceitful, or hypocritical, and his restraint is telling. The first opportunity came when U.S. aircraft broke into Venezuelan airspace, dropped special forces into the heart of the capital, and abducted President Nicolas Maduro, a Moscow ally nominally protected by Russian S-300 air defense batteries and bodyguards from another Russian ally, Cuba. Prior to its foreign ministry's rhetorical fireworks on Tuesday, for almost 2 weeks, Moscow was silent about the protests. The Kremlin was not sure that Kame's administration would survive and that any harsh statements would hinder the mending of ties with new authorities that could have replaced it. Think about what this actually means for Tehran's survival as American carrier strike groups close in on Iranian waters. The Chinese party line in reference to those raging protests across Iran was mild rhetorical support for the regime. On January 12th, the Chinese Foreign Ministry expressed hope that Tehran will overcome the current difficulties and uphold stability in the country. Nor did Beijing offer its strategic partner air defense support last summer or call on the U.S. to restrain Jerusalem during the 12-day war. Much of the same applies to Russia and Russo-Iranian ties. Then came the revelation that exposes Putin's real priorities in this crisis. For Moscow, Tehran is now a disposable ally. Indeed, Russia has been dependent on Iranian drones and missiles for its war against Ukraine. Moscow has been purchasing nearly $3 billion worth of missiles since 2021. But Iranian stockpiles are finite and may well be running dry. After all, Iran relies on China for components to refurbish its missile program, and that is now subject to American interdiction. Russia's ability to purchase Iranian weapons has evaporated. And here's where China's calculation becomes crystal clear for abandoning Tehran. In April, she is scheduled to host President Trump in Beijing. China plays global chess, but surely it has bigger fish to fry than helping prop up a failing regime the Americans want gone. With an eye to Taiwan and visions of spheres of influence, the Chinese want a grand bargain. Will Xi allow a wobbly and fragmenting Iran to gum things up? The answer appears to be absolutely not. But what American intelligence discovered next proves Tehran stands completely alone against the full weight of U.S. military power. In addition to the 3 destroyers operating with and defending the Abraham Lincoln, 4 more destroyers are operating under Central Command's authority in the Middle East, 1 in the Eastern Mediterranean, 1 in the Red Sea, and 2 in the area of the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf. In addition, 3 littoral combat ships are operating in the Persian Gulf, USS Canberra, USS Tulsa, and USS Santa Barbara, all equipped with capabilities to neutralize naval mines. All of the destroyers are Arleigh Burke-class vessels. Each is capable of launching Tomahawk cruise missiles at targets up to 600 kilometers away. Then, intelligence sources revealed Beijing's true calculation, abandoning its Iranian partner. As Iranian authorities kill thousands of protesters and U.S. President Donald Trump considers military action, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs finds itself on the sidelines calling for calm. To be sure, China has considerable interests in Iran, but those interests are not existential or even critical. This reflects an asymmetry in the Sunni-Iranian relationship. China is much more important to Iran than vice versa. Beijing will be unsentimental about events inside Iran and about the fate of Iran's current regime. For China, its interests in Iran will be focused on protecting stability, ensuring continuing access to Iranian oil exports, and seeking to prevent the emergence of a pro-American regime in Tehran. And here's the devastating calculation that seals Iran's isolation. Beijing would also attempt to mitigate the risk of Iran becoming a flashpoint in U.S.-China relations. Stable ties with Washington remain a priority, particularly as China wants to use Trump's planned April visit to China to secure economic and strategic relief from American pressure. Beijing will be loath for events in Iran, Venezuela, or elsewhere to interfere with these higher objectives. Iran has become expendable in China's grand strategy with Washington, but what Moscow revealed next about its Iranian alliance proves the relationship was always transactional. It's one thing to export Russian helicopters to Iran to fight the insurgency, and it's easy to imagine Moscow becoming a haven for fleeing Iranian leaders, but it's very difficult to imagine Russian troops defending the Iranian regime on the ground. During the protests, several Il-76 military transport aircraft have reportedly arrived in Iran from Russia and Belarus, along with the country's first Mi-28 attack helicopters. Back in December, photographs surfaced of dozens of Russian Spartak armored vehicles arriving in Iran. Mi-28 helicopters and Spartak armored vehicles are useless against Israeli or U.S. airstrikes, nor is there any need for them to deal with the current stage of the protests. Guns and tear gas are sufficient to disperse stone-throwing protesters. This equipment is best suited for fighting armed insurgents. Then came the Pentagon's deployment that surrounds Tehran with overwhelming American firepower. At the core of the American naval force is the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, which arrived in the Arabian Sea on Monday after being redirected from a planned deployment in the South China Sea. The vessel is one of the U.S. Navy's 10 nuclear-powered Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. The scale of the Iranian protests has already given rise to reports that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is planning to flee to Russia if the situation worsens. Granting asylum to authoritarian leaders is one of Moscow's key incentives in its cooperation with other autocracies. Regional powers recognize Tehran's complete isolation from its traditional allies. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are calculating whether American military strikes will create opportunities to reshape regional power dynamics without Russian or Chinese interference. Israel is preparing strike packages knowing that Putin will not provide Iran with advanced S-400 air defense systems or send Russian forces to defend Iranian territory against American carrier-based attacks. Turkey watches as Moscow abandons another Middle Eastern ally. Recognizing that Russia's regional influence has collapsed completely after losing Syria and now effectively surrendering Iran to American military pressure. The European Union remains divided but increasingly confident that neither Russia nor China will challenge American military operations against Tehran, removing the risk of great power confrontation over Iranian regime survival. Qatar and Oman attempt to mediate knowing that neither Beijing nor Moscow will provide meaningful diplomatic support to prevent American strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities and missile production sites. One thing is absolutely certain. Putin has abandoned Iran as the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group surrounds the Persian Gulf with 7 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles capable of striking targets more than 600 kilometers inside Iranian territory. China chose Trump's April Beijing summit over defending Tehran and cut Iranian oil imports by 28%, while Beijing's UN envoy offered only empty rhetoric without military commitment. Russia sent Mi-28 helicopters, useful only against ground insurgents, while refusing to provide S-400 air defenses or deploy troops to defend the Islamic Republic against American airstrikes. Moscow is negotiating to take Iranian-enriched uranium while positioning itself to grant asylum to fleeing regime officials as the Kremlin hedges on Tehran's survival.